The host of RN Breakfast, Patricia Karvelas, joins us now for our regular talk on federal politics. Patricia, g'day. We've been following the progress of this industrial relations bill with you now over a couple of weeks. Where is it at, and does it look like it's going to get through?
Well, it can still get through, although if you listen to the words of Senator David Pocock this morning, he says, as it stands right now, he can't in good conscience pass the bill. But my understanding is that there are negotiations to change some elements. So that doesn't mean he won't support the bill. He's saying he won't support it as it stands. Now, the government is looking to make some of the changes that he's been asking for, not all of them. So ultimately, it will be a case of whether he blinks or not, whether he is prepared to go there. So I'm sure the government's a little more nervous after today's media intervention from Senator David Pocock. But I still am leaning to saying that I do believe that this bill will pass by the end of the year. I could be wrong. There's a lot more to play out, but this will happen all the way into next week. It's early days in terms of negotiations and the sorts of changes the government must have in its back pocket that it's going to be putting on the table to get Pocock's support. Of course, they need that extra vote on top of the Greens, who have largely said they'll support this industrial relations changes.
And so take us through the detail, some of the detail of what he wants still.
Well, the definition of small business is the big one, right? And the 15 full-time employees definition is one he wants expanded. Where they'll land is not clear, whether it be 50 or even a little higher. I think the government is willing absolutely to negotiate on that threshold. Remember, the government needs this win, and so they both have quite a bit of power here. That's why you're seeing this to and fro, and you're seeing this kind of play out publicly. David Pocock does have quite a bit of negotiating power, but equally so does the government, because it may not, I hear that people saying, you know, it didn't take this particular policy of multi-employer bargaining to the election, and maybe it didn't describe every element, absolutely. But it did talk about this issue every single day of the election campaign, the idea of getting wages moving and being prepared to look at the industrial relations system. So I suspect there is more to play out. Next week will be the big week, not necessarily this week. You'll have a lot more sort of posturing this week, but I think the government is likely to get this bill through.
OK, now the big international climate conference wrapped up with a commitment to this climate loss and damages fund. Explain for us what this means and what detail is there about what commitments there will be from individual developed countries.
Unfortunately, the detail is light, although it is still significant, I think, that there has been an agreement at the COP27 for the fund to exist. Next year is the crucial year. A committee will be set up to determine the size of the fund, the contributions to the fund, how you get the money. So does the Pakistan recently had those awful floods, right? That is clearly a climate change event. Would they be able to access that? How quickly? All of those sorts of questions. And then the question is, what will Australia contribute? I really pressed the Climate Change Minister, Chris Bowen, about that today, and he essentially said Australia had fought to establish the fund, and that gives you a big indication that clearly Australia thinks it's a good idea, but he wouldn't sign up to a fund, he says, yet, where you don't know what contributions have to be made or how the money would be spent. Now, of course, the government needs to be careful about signing up to something with a blank cheque, but I think if it's fought for it to be established, it would be rather weird and embarrassing for it not to then be part of its formulation, right? Like, it's contradictory, I think, to go to that extent and then not do the rest of the work. But again, a lot still to be determined. But the principle is an important one, and clearly they've determined at that COP meeting that it's an important principle and they're moving forward on it.
And is this an issue on which there will likely be a clear division between what Labor is prepared to do and what the Coalition is prepared to do, considering the questions we've heard from Peter Dutton during question time?
Absolutely. And I think this is an interesting area for Peter Dutton. He obviously is kind of arguing, you know, why should we contribute to that fund? And he's really pushing this political point. Remember, they lost a swathe of seats, the Coalition, on this issue of climate change. I think, yes, he's probably appealing to some voters on that very parochial, domestic, nationalistic, why should we give our taxpayer money to other countries? But at the same time, if you're trying to appeal again to the areas that lost faith, I don't know if this position is helpful. So it's a risky proposition, but at the same time, the government's hedging, isn't it? It's saying it thinks it's a good idea, but not fully signing up. So lots still to play out in terms of where they all land on this.
Okay, have a sensational Tuesday afternoon, Patricia.
You too.
Cheers.